All right. Well, let's see. Nope. Yep. I do have audio. Whoa, that is spiking really bad. There we go. That looks better. Okay. Cool. Fantastic. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. I'm a senior program manager inside of Microsoft Cloud and AI. I'm a longtime web developer, and I am here today for now week 3 of this new series that we're checking out here, that we're testing out here, called Code and Coffee. And what I want to do real quick before we get started, although I'm already seeing a lot of people connected, and I'll say hi to everybody here in a second. But what we're going to do here today is a little bit different than what you would normally see on a lot of streams. So what we're going to do today is we're going to continue building upon a project that we've started out. Now, if you weren't here earlier, don't worry at all about that. We'll go ahead and share out the repository. I'll answer all of the questions and everything else. Now, that actually sort of leads me right to the heart of what it is that we're going to be doing here with regards to like asking questions and things like that, is that the goal is to explore. So I have in my head the couple of features that I want to be able to add into this project. Maybe we're going to get there. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll go off on a tangent. Maybe we'll do something else. Things will certainly break. There's no pre-canned demos or anything like that. So all of the code that you're going to see written here is going to be done live. You're going to see me bring up docs and so forth. So this is really all designed to be exploration. And so, you know, grab a beverage of your choice, sit on down, and let's get in, let's break some things, and let's have a little bit of fun. But first I want to say hi to everybody in chat. So MG, good to see you back again. Carlos, same. Abdul, Elena, Anton, Hanish, good morning, or, you know, again, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you happen to be. It's great to see you back again. Hello to Paolo. Good to see you here. And, you know, this, by the way, real quick here, ask questions. Like, this is very much what this is all about. So this is very much, you know, community driven. This is very much chat driven. I'm here to talk with chat. So good morning to Jay, to Roy, to David. Yeah, say hi, introduce yourself, ask questions. Okay, so I've got my esteemed colleague Mallory in the background. She's going to be helping out periodically. She's already thrown in the link to the repository, and you can go clone all of the code there, which I'm going to open up in just a couple of seconds. So good to see Toronto, London, Dubai. Good morning, Amro. I've never been to Dubai. I've been to Toronto numerous times. I've been to London a few times. It's actually where my little headshot is from, doing afternoon tea in London, or high tea. I apologize, high tea in London. Good to see you, Linnea, down in Arizona. I'm assuming it's sunny down there, sunny and dry. So, cool. All right. I'm going to get a sip of coffee here. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and let me Gosh, why? Okay, I give me 1 second here. I've got an OBS issue that it didn't bring over my audio. Hold on one. There we go. Okay, that should be better. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, there's this little tool that all streamers use called OBS, and you've no doubt at some point heard streamers complain a little bit about OBS. It's sort of like sport for a lot of streamers to complain about it. It's actually an amazing piece of software. It's super powerful. It gives you the ability to do an awful lot about laying out your screens and all of that, but it's a little bit finicky at times, and it doesn't always behave the way that you would expect it to. Yeah, so basically what wound up happening is when I set up these scenes last night, this one here that you're now seeing with my copy of Visual Studio right over there, unfortunately I didn't bring the microphone over into that. So yeah, a lot of Twitch users use it. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's basically it's like the de facto tool for basically all streamers. So yeah, so sorry about that. Okay. In any event, yeah, so let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about TypeScript. So if you happen to be here last week, or even if you didn't, where we left off is we added in a server-side function here for our little app. And let me actually bring up our app as it sits. So this right here is live. I'm going to hit refresh here to just show that it's live. This is what we're currently building. So what we're currently building is a website that's going to list out some dogs, and we're going to continue to grow and build this. And as you can see from the list of goals just up above my head here, what I want to try and do today is I want to be able to add in a database. So we're going to take this app and we're going to add in a database, because as it sits right now, and again, you can go check out the repository that was linked to a second ago. But as it sits right now, we've got an array that we're sending down. So it's just a hard-coded array. This is obviously not what we're going to be looking for. We want something that's going to be a bit more dynamic here, that we want the ability to eventually add new dogs to this and so forth. We do want this to be data-driven. Now, one very big feature that we took advantage of inside of TypeScript, which is the language that we're using, is we took advantage of this little thing known as an interface. So interfaces in TypeScript are a fantastic tool, because what they do is they allow you to define data structures. And in fact, when we're talking about why you might want to use TypeScript versus JavaScript, probably the biggest reason is because you want the ability to describe what your data is going to look like. That if I go in and I just write a bit of JavaScript, let's say function wibble or whatever it is that it happens to be, name here, the problem that I have is that we don't know what name is going to be here. And this causes a lot of issues, especially if you're trying to write JavaScript where you're creating different functions, you're setting up those different parameters, and now I go in to start writing some code to use those parameters. I don't know what that's going to be. Like intuitively, if I look at the name there being name, I can infer that that's going to be a string. And so as a result, as I'm writing my code, I can count on the fact that that's going to be a string. I don't know that with 100% certainty, but I think we can all agree that if you see a parameter named name, that it's going to be a string. But even still, it can't offer me a lot of support. So I might not remember, and this is a true story, this is something I quite frequently forget, I might not remember how to convert something to lowercase letters, because depending on where you happen to be, what language it is that you're using, the method call that you make varies. So is it too lower? Is it too lowercase? Is it just simply lowercase? Is it something like Python where there's, maybe an external function for it? Like, what is it? I don't know. I don't remember. And unfortunately, because of the fact that the runtime here doesn't know, the designer here doesn't know for 100% certainty that name is a string, it can't help me. It's basically just going, okay, you've got a parameter here. I don't know what it is, and that's it. And so when we're talking about TypeScript, the biggest thing that I'm able to do here is I'm able to then identify that this is going to be a string. And so now when I say name dot, now what you're going to notice is now I'm getting IntelliSense. Now I can see everything that that name is able to offer me, because now I've identified that as a string there. And so when we think about then an interface, if you're used to a programming language like Java or C or C Sharp, actually I shouldn't say C, C++, or C Sharp or something like that, that supports interfaces, an interface allows us to define a data structure. So now I could go in and say something like interface person, for example, and I could say name string, and now what I've done here is now I've defined a data type. And so now if I go in and I say const Christopher person, like this, now what you're going to notice is it yells at me, because it's going, hey, wait a minute, you told me that this is going to be a person. Person has to have a name, and you're not giving me a name here. And so now I can go in and I can say name colon, and then maybe I go 42. Well, now and again, you're going to notice that it's yelling at me. Let's go, hey, wait a minute, you're trying to put a number into a string, that's not going to work. So now I, of course, need to do this. Oops. And now when I come down here and I go in and I say Christopher dot, again, you're going to notice that I see that there's a property there of name. So TypeScript is able to help me out. And the real beauty of this is over here on the right side, this is my JavaScript. And what you're going to notice in my JavaScript here is the fact that the interface is gone. There is no interface, because JavaScript doesn't know what an interface is. So when you're doing TypeScript, it's always, always, always the JavaScript that runs. And so when this transpiles down into JavaScript, that interface, poof, just goes away. So interfaces are completely weightless. Use interfaces. There's no harm ever in creating interfaces. You will never have a performance hit by creating interfaces. And so where interfaces really then shine is in this type of a scenario where, remember, what we're going to do here is we're going to set up this little website where I've got my server-side code that is going to be returning down a list of objects. In fact, I can go in, I should be able to just go API dogs like this. Yeah. So this right here. This is our API. This is our server API. So this is sending down an array of dogs, and so we can see the name and age on all of those. And then behind the scenes here, there's a little bit of JavaScript that's going to be, let's just zoom out a little bit more here. There we go. It's going to display all of those items. And so in my code, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to share those interfaces between both of those. And so I can do that by setting that up as an interface here. Now, I'm going to answer a question, and then I'm going to come back to this little d.ts thing here in just a second. So MJ asked the question, do companies accept candidates who use TypeScript in their interviews? Because it gives you access to explicitly define the data type and data structure. So when it comes to like coding interviews and languages that they're going to accept and things like that, all of that's going to be very dependent on the company. So this is definitely something that you should ask about in advance before you walk in. That if there are going to be coding questions, which there basically always is, you should absolutely ask what language they're going to be in, so that way you can be prepared for that. So yeah. So that's really going to depend. My own personal opinion, me, Christopher Harrison, I have a real tough time when it comes to like whiteboard coding questions, because developers don't write on a whiteboard. We write with code editors, and we're very used to the support that a code editor is going to give us. So at least for me personally, if I'm going to have a candidate that I'm interviewing do something on a whiteboard, it's not going to be coding related, or at least not directly coding related. I absolutely want to see them write code, but what I want to see is I want to see them write pseudocode, because the questions that I'm going to be asking are going to much more be around their thought process. So I'm going to provide them with a scenario, and I'm going to then ask them how they would solve it. Because what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for what your thought process is. I'm looking for, can you problem solve? That I don't care whether or not you can write a bubble sort, because in all of my years of writing code, the next time that I write a bubble sort will be the first time I write a bubble sort. I have never written a bubble sort. Now, that's of course not to say that learning algorithms isn't important, because it is, because it does help teach your brain. It does help show you the different things that you need to think about when doing software development. So teaching algorithms and all of that, yes, that's important, and I'm not saying that it's not. What I am saying though is I really struggle with interviews that are just going to focus in on a memorization of an algorithm, because that doesn't tell me anything about the developer. What tells me something about the developer is what their thought process is. What tells me something about the developer is, if I am going to ask them to write code, how well can they write code using tools of the trade? Because again, nobody's writing production code on a whiteboard. What do you write on a whiteboard? You write pseudocode on a whiteboard. So anyway, that's Christopher Harrison's opinion on the coding interview. So there you have it. Wasn't necessarily something I was expecting to talk about, but I'm glad that we did it. Okay. In any event, yeah. So my d.ts file here. This is where I was trying to get to. They're mowing just outside. I hope that the noise that's there isn't impacting anything. If it is, please let me know. There's not going to be a whole lot I can do about it, but just let me know if the background noise is becoming a challenge. Okay, so let's talk about this d.ts file. So this d.ts file allows me to provide type definitions. And the goal of a type definition is to allow me to, well, define what a type is going to look like. So if we go back over here to our TypeScript page, what you're going to notice is the fact that, again, my interface is gone. So the interface is going to help me when I'm writing my code, but it's not going to help me at all, or it's not going to help the runtime at all. So as a result, all of this is going to wind up getting stripped away. So to help support that, TypeScript has this specific file type called whatever .d.ts. And this is now where I'm going to define my data type. So I don't have any implementation here. An interface has no implementation. Instead, it just has definitions of file types. So, of data types. So now this is something that can be used everywhere. And so what you're going to notice, if I come back up here to this index.ts, this is my server function, you're going to notice right up here that I'm now able to import that in. And so when I create my array, I'm creating my array of dog. And so now all of these are going to be a dog. So if I try to set this, for example, to the string of 8, you're going to notice that it errors out on me and goes, hey, wait a minute, that's not a number, that's a string. So it's going to fail out there. So that was the fix. If you happen to be here last week, is just to have made that a d.ts file, and that then solved the problem. Amro asked the question here, can an interface support methods or just properties? I'm just going to change the verbiage there real quick. And the answer is this can actually support functions as well. So what I could do is I can say, what would be... get display, I don't know, something like this, or bark. We'll just go a little bit cute here, and then maybe target whatever it is that the dog is barking at as a string. So I can go in and I can define a function just like that. So basically I'm using the exact same syntax here that I would for a normal function. I just don't have the word function at the very beginning, that it's going to see those parentheses and it's going to know, oh, okay, that's a function. So it's doing it implicitly there. So I just don't use the word the word function. And if I want to identify a return type, for example, string, oops, use the right syntax there. There we go. Then I can just go like that. String. There we go. And go like that. So you can absolutely go in and provide functions as well. And if you want to mark anything as optional, you can put a question mark. Is it going to be after the name on this? There we go. Yeah, it's going to be after the name on a function, and then it's after the name on all of the properties. So now those become optional. So you actually have a lot of flexibility when it comes to interfaces. And you know, one of the really interesting things about TypeScript is, you know, if you go in and take a look at the docs for interfaces, what you're going to notice is that there's a lot of power that's here. And one of the I think more interesting things is because of the fact that the interfaces are only for TypeScript. This is the only place that they exist, is that they give you a lot of extra power. They give you a lot of extra flexibility that you might not see on another language. That if you go in and you look at these, and especially if you're like a Java developer or a C# developer, you might look at some of the capabilities that are here about like combining interfaces together and so forth, and you might go, hey, wait a minute, I can't do that in C#, and you're absolutely right, but you can do it in TypeScript. And it's one of the advantages to having something like this is because of the fact that, again, you know, interfaces don't become part of the JavaScript, it gives TypeScript a lot of additional room to work so that it can go in and decide that it wants to implement things that don't actually work in JavaScript. And as long as it emits good JavaScript, what the TypeScript is doing becomes irrelevant. So it gives you a bit more power and flexibility there. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of interfaces. So okay, cool. All right. Well, let's turn our attention to adding in a database that right now we've got. An array here. Oh, I need to make sure I'm saving. Let me get rid of this first. There we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, so right now we've got an array that we're returning out, and that's fine for what we were doing originally. But now I want to add in a database. Now I want to make this thing grow. So let's add in a database. Now, when we're doing TypeScript, one of the things that we have to remember is we are writing JavaScript. We're writing JavaScript indirectly, but we are writing JavaScript. So this is the world in which we are playing. That we're doing JavaScript. And so we have access then to all of the tooling that's available for JavaScript. We have access to all of the libraries and everything else. And where our server-side JavaScript is going to be running is going to be inside of Azure Functions. And so this is going to be a node form of a runtime. And so inside of Azure Functions, I can use any library that I might want. So I'm working with JavaScript here, and I'm working inside of Node. So just because I'm writing TypeScript and just because I'm using Azure Functions doesn't mean that I now have to go off and start using a whole new tool set. I can keep using the tooling that I'm already familiar with. I might just wind up using it, as we're going to see, in a slightly different way to be able to take advantage of some of the coolness that TypeScript has to offer me. So let's get in and let's take a look here at Mongoose. So if you're not familiar, Mongoose is it's a database client. The reason that I'm pausing here for just a second is in Christopher speak, in Christopher language, in Christopher ease, in the language that I speak, I use certain terms rather generically, even though they're technically not always correct. So one of those terms that I use very generically is this term called ORM, or Object Relational Mapper. Object Relational Mapper. Yeah, there you go. So the whole thing about an object relational mapper is the fact that this is going to act as a go-between. So I'm going to have my object-oriented code here, I'm going to have my relational database here, and my ORM is now going to sit in the middle of those two. And as the Wikipedia article describes, it acts as sort of a virtual object database, so that when I'm writing code, I just talk to the ORM, and then the ORM talks to the database. It handles all of the translations, sends everything back over, and then away we go from there, which is fantastic. And to me, then I think an ORM could be used for anything at all, basically, that's going to act as a go-between between your code and your database. So I will openly admit that I call Mongoose an ORM. but it's technically not. And the reason that it's technically not is because of the fact that it uses MongoDB. And if you're not familiar with MongoDB, MongoDB is a it's a NoSQL database. So it's storing objects. So technically, it's not doing relational mapping here, and all of that's fine. And so they call it an ODM, an object database mapper, I think is what the D stands for there. You could go in and check the docs and determine that. But either way, it's something that's going to act as a go-between between me and my backend database. And this now just simplifies my code. It makes it easier because now I can focus in on what it is that I want to be able to write. But more importantly, what we're going to see, let me actually bring up the docs here, is I'm going to be able to define what my data types, what my structure is going to look like. So what you'll notice is that they give you an example here where they're going to set up a schema. And so in this schema, you're going to notice they're going to have title and author and body and comments and so forth and so on. And they can go in and identify all of the different data types that are going to be used here. And the advantage of doing this is that now I can count on this middle mapper here. I can now count on Mongoose to handle a lot of the tough work for me. That when we talk about data and we talk about things like data validation and so forth, I don't want to have to always be thinking about this. And so fortunately, Mongoose gives me the ability to say, hey, this is what I need you to do. I need you to make sure that a string is only going to be X number of characters, or I need you to make sure that something is going to be required or something is not required or whatever it is. And then I can just count on Mongoose to then enforce all of those rules. So I get a lot of advantages to using a tool like Mongoose, that I get the ability to describe what my data is going to look like, and I get the ability to have this do a lot of that validation and so forth for me. So there's a lot of power to using a tool like Mongoose, and so this is what I'm going to use. Now you might be looking at the schema here, and you might be thinking, oh, hey, look at that. So we're going to create a brand new schema. And our schema is going to have some properties. We've got a title, we've got an author, we've got a body, and we've got some other things as well. But let's just take those top three. And you might look at that and you might go, hey, wait a minute, Christopher. That sounds an awful lot like an interface. And you'd be right. It is an awful lot like an interface, and we're absolutely going to go in and see that. But what we're also going to notice is it's not going to behave exactly the way that we're expecting here. So we'll get in and we'll explore all of this. Okay, cool. So let's do this. I'm going to bring up the quick start here. So if we bring up the quick start on Mongoose, what we can see is it wants us to do an npm save on Mongoose. We can see that it's going to have us connect to a database, and we can see that down below it's going to have us go in and set up a schema. So let's sort of start from the top here and work our way down. So let's start from the top, where we're going to install Mongoose, we're going to pull it in, we're going to do our connection, and then we're going to go ahead and and start to work from there. So let's start from the top here. So let's go in and just install Mongoose. Okay. So there's my API folder. And so on my API folder, let me, you know what, give me 2 seconds here. Talk amongst yourselves. There we go. I just realized I need to install Zoomit. If you're not already familiar with Zoomit, Zoomit is a wonderful tool for Windows that will allow you to draw on your screen. And so it's fantastic for doing presentations. There we go. So let me, there we go. Yellow. Okay. So let's go back to my project structure here. So this folder contains my API. This folder is nothing but a node project. That's what this is. It's a node project that my code is going to be running inside of Azure Functions. Azure Functions is a node runtime. This is a node project. And the way that I add packages or modules into a node project is by using my package.json file. And so from inside of here, I can now do whatever it is that, or I can now install whatever it is that I might want. And in fact, if I open this up, you're going to notice that we've already got a few dev dependencies and dependencies here. So our dependencies are what this is going to require when it goes to run for real. Our dev dependencies is what it's going to require when it's running locally. And so you'll notice, for example, that TypeScript is not going to be required as a full dependency because it's always going to be the JavaScript that runs here. Okay, cool. All right, let me cd into API. All right. Are there any questions? Chat's been awful quiet after we stopped talking about interviews. Just making sure everybody's still out there. If you have questions, please ask. This is what I'm here for. Otherwise, I just get lonely. I guess I'll just be lonely. All right. So let's go ahead and install Microsoft. So I'm going to say npm, or install Mongoose. So I'm going to say npm install Mongoose. One relatively recent, good to see. People are still here. Hi. Fantastic. Okay, just making sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, that's a great question. So Jay asked the question, why are Azure Functions a dev dependency? This is a fantastic question. So we're actually going to see this in a few minutes. But what this package here is this is actually all of the data types for Azure Functions. So if we remember this little interfaces.d file that we created, we've got our dog right here. This is just defining what the data structure is. And if we remember again, when this is compiled, it's not going to emit the interface. So it's going to just go away. It's never going to be run. So this right here, sort of by definition then, is a dev dependency. This is not being used for runtime. So if we bring this back now to our Azure functions, the thing about the @Azure functions here is this is actually nothing but the data types here, because all of the libraries that are required to run Azure functions exist already on Azure functions. So we don't need to reinstall them. You can almost just think of them as being installed globally. They're already there. There's nothing that I have to do to worry about it. So then the question becomes, I guess, why have this at all in the first place? That if Azure Functions is already going to have it, it's a dev dependency, so we already know that it's not going to be reinstalled on production. Why have it? And the reason that we have it is for this ability right here, and really actually, for this ability right here. So what you're going to notice is we're importing in a set of classes here. So Azure Function, Context, HTTP Request. And then what I want you to notice, like right here, or right here, or right here, is the fact that we're using all of those classes as data types. So the reason that it exists in a dev dependency is so that way inside of my code, I can import that in, and then in turn inside of my code, I now have the ability to say context.log. And I can see that now with my IntelliSense. So what the dev dependency is doing is it's giving me this ability. It's giving me the ability to have better design time support. If I was writing this in JavaScript, that's actually not at all needed, because JavaScript doesn't support these types. That my going in and setting up type hints is irrelevant because JavaScript doesn't support that. So the reason that it's there is for in my case right now TypeScript, and it's for the ability for me to be able to get that design time support. So the reason that it's a dev dependency and not installed on production is because of the fact that Azure Functions will already have all of that there, so I don't need to reinstall it. And it's there to give me the ability to have that level of IntelliSense. So great question. So Alex asked the question, TypeScript works with ES6. And the short answer to that question is yes. The slightly longer answer is TypeScript is always transpiled or compiled down into JavaScript. So it's never the TypeScript that's running. It's always the JavaScript or the ECMAScript that's going to be running. That's what's going to be running here. So it's never the TypeScript. It's always the JavaScript or ECMAScript. Now, one of the really neat things that you can do, if I open up my tsconfig file here, is you can actually indicate the version you can actually indicate the version of ECMAScript that you want this to target. The default is actually ECMAScript 3, but if you want to say ES6, if you want to do some of the others, will you give me, there we go, my IntelliSense, you'll notice that you can choose what it is that you want it to emit as. And one great place to see this is, let's go here. That's interesting. Okay, it's still doing an awaiter. All right, I don't have a good spot to show it. Yeah. So one of the things that you can play around with is if you set up a TypeScript project, and in particular, if you use some more newer functions like async await and things like that, is that it will generate different code depending on depending on what it is that you specify here. In fact, here, let's just do this because this will give me the ability to answer both your question and then Jay's follow-up question, which is, does that mean that importing the Azure function will have no impact after transpiling? And the answer to that is yes, it's going to have no impact. And so we can actually see that here. So what I'm going to do, npm run build. There we go. So let me chugga. Let me come up here and what's going to be the easiest way for me to do this? Okay, let me scroll down to here. Okay, so on the left side, this is my TypeScript over here on the left side. And then over on the right side is my JavaScript or ES3. So left side TypeScript, right side is ES3. So first of all, to Jay's question about no impact after transpiling, that's true. And so what you'll notice is that I've got my const HTTP trigger Azure function. And what you're going to notice, this is how it's exported. You'll notice that it's exported as a var, and you're going to notice that it's just creating a normal function. So there's no data type here. You'll notice that there's no data type hint after context, anything like that. All of that winds up going away. So when you transpile, all of that goes away because, again, it's emitting JavaScript, and so those little things actually have no impact then on the resultant JavaScript. The other thing that I want you to notice, let me just put that away, and this is going to go back to Alex's question, which is about the versions here, is what I want you to notice is it's generating a lot of like a waiter and code like that. And the reason that it's generating that code is because of the fact that I'm using async await in here. Now, I don't actually have an await because I'm not making a call that would require an await. But just because of the fact that I've got that async, this is my signaling, hey, I might also have an await as well. And so it's got to go in and build up all of that code as appropriate. And so ES3 doesn't support that. And so it builds up a bunch of boilerplate code to make sure that it's there. And we can actually start to see some of the differences here in how the code is emitted. So if I say ES6, and now let me go ahead and run this, you're going to notice that generator went away because that's now not needed on ES6. Or if I go in and I say, I think if I do ES 2017 question mark. Yeah, if I do ES 2017, now you're going to notice that it just leaves behind the async there. So you actually get to choose the version of ECMAScript that you want this to be able to run on. So if you know you're going to be running this on an older system, something that maybe doesn't support natively async await, then you can go in and do it. And again, this is, one of those great advantages to using TypeScript is it gives me the ability to use those types of capabilities even if JavaScript doesn't support it, because it's going to generate the appropriate JavaScript for me. So yeah. And Jay asked the question, what hotkey did I use to invoke the IntelliSense? I actually didn't. So I just got rid of whatever was there, and then I just hit a quote, and then that brought it up. So this is, if you're ever not seeing IntelliSense pop up inside Visual Studio Code, typically you need to do one of two things. You either A, just need to hit a period and then it will show up, or B, just back up a step prior and start over again. So if I go in and I say, for example, ES6, and then I come back into here and I change it, I'm not getting the IntelliSense anymore. So the moment that you see that it's not giving you that IntelliSense, just back up another step. So rather than typing inside the quotes, I'm just going to get rid of it, retype in the quotes, and then away we go from there. So now I've got my my ES6. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. Where was I? Yeah. Great questions. Thank you for asking those. This is what this is all about. This is all about, let's explore, let's ask questions, let's play around with things. So, ask questions. Ask questions. Okay. Let me go ahead and install Mongoose. So I'm going to say npm install Mongoose. So one of the relatively recent updates to npm is the fact that it will now automatically save inside of your package JSON file. So we can see that right there. This still sometimes gets me because if you've been doing Node for a while, it wouldn't save by default, so you always had to go tick save. And my brain still wants to do that. It still feels very uncomfortable not to say save, but you don't have to anymore. So I did my my install. Let me bring up the right one. Yeah, there we go. Did my install and it automatically did the save. Okay, cool. So now I've got Mongoose installed, and so now if I come back over to here and I remember the instructions that we saw previously, if I now want to use Mongoose, I can now say const mongoose equals require mongoose. Okay, and then I can say mongoose, and then I hit dot, and then you're going to notice that nothing happens. So I'm not getting IntelliSense. Yeah, control space can also do that. I'll be honest, I never remember that shortcut key. I always just back up a level and do it that way. So yeah, control space can often give that to you as well. All right, so you'll notice here that I type mongoose dot and nothing happens. If I type mongoose dot and even like control space, it's not giving me real IntelliSense here. That if I go back and I read the docs here, it should right here, it tells me right here, it says mongoose.connect. I should have this, and I don't. And now the question becomes, well, why? Why am I not getting IntelliSense? That, Christopher, you just spent an awful lot of time going on and on and on about how TypeScript will give us IntelliSense, and now we're not getting IntelliSense. Okay, so the reason that we're not getting IntelliSense here is because of the fact that Mongoose was written in JavaScript. And the problem that we have is because of the fact that it's written in JavaScript, we don't have any type definitions. We have JavaScript. And again, remember, the challenge that we're trying to overcome with JavaScript is the fact that we don't know what any data types are. We don't know anything about this. That a lot of this is just inferred on the fly. And that's not what TypeScript is all about. TypeScript is about knowing what those data types are in advance. And so as a result, we're going to need some level of TypeScript here. And this is where types come into play. So let me go back over here. And let's bring up definitely typed. So definitely typed is this wonderful project where what people do is they will look at popular NPM or node packages, and they will create d.ts files for all of these projects. And what I then need to do is just install those type files. Now, what's great is the fact that those are all available by just using this @types prefix. And what you're going to notice for most every popular package, it's not very often that you're going to come across one that's commonly used that doesn't support this, is I just simply go npm install save dev. Why can I not remember? Save -dev? Yeah, I was right. Okay, never doubt yourself. Save dev, and then simply @types mongoose. So instead of me doing mongoose, it's now just @types mongoose. And so now I run this, chugga, chugga, chugga. And now what you're going to notice is I'm still not getting it. Why not? I might have to just close this. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to import this another way. Oh, what do I want? I want okay. I know I can do this another way though. I'm going to cheat. I've got this somewhere else. I'm just going to go look. I know I've got this code somewhere else. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go cheat. See, I told you, I'm really coding here. I know I'm close, but my syntax is just slightly off here. Oh, that's weird. Okay. It should be giving me IntelliSense. I was right. Ah, thank you. Thank you, Peter. That's what I was looking for. That's the syntax I was looking for. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Okay, that's the syntax that I needed. I knew it was something, I just could not remember what it was off the top of my head. And unfortunately, I've been doing so much Python lately, and Python and TypeScript, that import syntax is so similar, it messes with my head, and then I can never remember where I am. So yeah, so that's the syntax that I'm looking for. And so now I can see my full IntelliSense, and now I can see my connect, and now I could go in and provide my connection string there. And so now I'm getting that IntelliSense. So this is the syntax that I was looking for, and all of that magic is made possible by this right here. So thank you, Peter. I greatly appreciate that. So Jay asked the question, does that mean that @Azure function is just the type definition and not the actual production library? That's a good question. I don't know. You know what I am going to do, though? I'm going to go in and I'm going to look. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so this is actually one really nice thing about NPM packages. I'm just going to go look at node modules, and so you can see interfaces.d.ts, and yeah, it's just the interfaces. Which, while we're at it, if I go into @types, and then I go look at Mongoose, you're going to notice that same thing, is that it's just the interfaces that's in here, and that's it. Okay, cool. All right. Amro had asked the question a couple of minutes ago, and I apologize for not getting to it sooner. I wanted to finish this first before I context switched. Amro asked the question about using Cosmos DB, and I am absolutely going to use Cosmos DB with the Mongo API. So that's eventually where we're going to get to here. So yeah, okay. All right. Now then, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about connection strings and about properly securing them. So one of the things that you notice is in their code here, they tell us mongoose.connect connection string, and then use new URL parser set to true. And let me make sure that I grab that, because if I don't, I'm going to get an error message at some point later on, and I want to make sure that I don't. Okay, cool. So there is that. So they hard code in this this connection string, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form, and I want to make this part clear, I'm not in any way, shape, or form picking on the fine folks that do Mongoose or write the documentation here. I'm not, because this is something that is commonly done, and it's even commonly done in the Microsoft docs as well. So this is not me complaining about the fine folks at Mongoose, because again, this is something that you see all over the place. And this is example code where they put connection strings and other types of potentially sensitive information hard-coded into the application. And this is bad, because frequently this is going to contain a username and a password. And frequently this is going to be published out to GitHub, which of course is clear text, public, and open to everybody. And so your security tip on this lovely Thursday or lovely Friday, depending on where in the world you happen to be, is publishing usernames and passwords in clear text on a publicly available server is, generally speaking, a bad idea. Now, fortunately, there's been a lot of tooling that's been generated to try and help catch this. So these days, if you do this with GitHub, depending on where you happen to be, GitHub is actually pretty good at picking out the fact that you've done something wrong, that you've published out a password. And will give you a warning message about that, which is wonderful. But that being said, we should always be in the habit of making sure that our passwords are secure. And one great tool for that is this little tool called .env. And so .env is available for Node, but it's also available for almost every other programming language in the world that you might be using. And what this does is it has you create a .env file with all of your usernames and passwords and connection strings and all of that, and then you just keep that locally. And then what you do is you call out to .env to load everything up, and then now all of those become system variables. And then eventually when you go to deploy, you set those system variables that way. And this is a very nice way to get a little bit of security to protect those values. Now, admittedly, this isn't perfect, because you do need to make sure that .env is going to be encrypted, or is not going to be published out, and of course it is still going to be just a file on your local system. So it's not going to give you the highest level of security, but what it will do is it will give you, in a lot of ways, a good enough level of security, so that for a lot of the projects that you're going to be working on, something like .env is perfect for this. And if you poke around, you'll also notice that there are add-ons that will do encryption here. If you take a look out on Azure, you'll notice that we've got a thing called Key Vault, which will give you a higher level of security, and so forth. So this is a very just convenient way to go in and handle something like this. One wonderful thing about Azure Functions is, where is my, oh, that's interesting. I don't have my local settings file. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. I don't know why it, am I just not seeing it, or it's not there? Huh. Weird. I don't know why it didn't generate it. Okay. In any event, what it should have generated is it should have generated this really neat file called local.settings. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and copy this, and hopefully this should still work automatically when we go in and run this. And so what you'll notice is that this gives me the ability to start setting up some values that I would typically be storing and wanting to protect. So this is effectively that same .env, but just baked right in to Azure Functions here. So this should be local here, and for some reason it's not, and that's all right. So I'm just going to create a new one. Local.settings.json, and whoosh. I'll just do a copy and paste. All right. By the way, sound effects help. All right, I don't need any of that. and I don't need any of that. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to say mongoose connection string, and I'm going to set this equal to my my MongoDB local host, and let's call this dogs, just like that. Let me make sure that my connection string is right. I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yeah, okay, I'm good. Yep. So yeah, so that is that's what I'm going to set this up as. Now, the magic of Azure Functions here is this is automatically going to read this in. So this is effectively .env, but just baked right in to Azure Functions. And what's also really cool is if you dig around a little bit more on local settings, you can actually go in and encrypt it locally. So that way, if you want to make sure that it is protected, that you have that ability, which is pretty slick. Okay, so now what I can do is now I can say process.env dot, and I have a great memory, it's just really short. There we go. Is now I can just read that in as a system variable. So this will automatically now pull this from my from that local settings file. And when we eventually deploy this, we'll be able to store this as a system variable inside of our project and do it that way, which is pretty slick. Okay. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to do in Mongoose, if we just keep going through the quick start guide. The next thing that we want to do is we want to set up a schema. And as we discussed before, our schema is going to be very similar to an interface. But I have a problem. And my problem is this. Remember, interfaces are not going to be omitted. Interfaces do not become JavaScript. There is no JavaScript equivalent to interfaces. So while, yes, this very much looks like an interface, and you are going to notice in a couple of minutes that I'll be able to incorporate an interface here, I'm not able to use an interface as a Mongoose schema. Because a Mongoose schema, at the end of it all, is an object. I know it looks so similar. Like if I just copied this spot right here, if I copied and pasted that and I put that in as an interface definition, TypeScript would absolutely be able to run with it. But again, interfaces don't exist. They're a figment of TypeScript's imagination, if you will. And so unfortunately, I can't use an interface as a schema. So this is going to mean that you are going to have some level of duplicated code. And I know that it's not ideal. I know that it's not perfect. It would be so fantastic if we could just use a schema as an interface or an interface as a schema. I'm with you. But unfortunately, at least as of right now, we're not able to do that. And again, it's because of the fact that interfaces don't exist. Okay, so let's create our schema here. So I'm actually going to sneak down just below dog here, and I'm going to say const dog schema equals new mongoose schema. And now I'll go ahead and say name string and age and number, just like that. Okay, cool. So this is now going to become the schema for my dog inside of my database. So Mongoose is going to be able to recognize this, and Mongoose will be able to create those items eventually for me inside of my database. Okay, and also enforce all the rules and so forth and so on. Now the next part here is this little thing known as a model. And a model in Mongoose terms is going to, it's sort of going to be a lot like a class, that my model is going to be designed to act as a representation of my database that I can now interact with. And so by using this model, I'm going to be able to create new items, update items, delete items, and retrieve items back from my database. And when this is set up, it's going to want to know two things. Number one is it's going to want to know a name. And that's going to be the name of the collection that it will create inside of my database. The next thing that it's going to want to know is what schema it should apply here. So I'm going to create a new collection called kitten, and then it's going to have that schema of, in this case, kitten. Now, in my case, I'm of course using dog. I'm not going to get into the which is better, dogs versus cats. I think it's pretty clear which side of this I fall on, but I'm not going to get into that conversation. So let's go ahead and let's create this model. So I'm going to say const dog model equals mongoose model. And it's going to ask me for a name, and I'll say dog, and then it's going to ask me for my schema here, which I'm going to specify as my dog schema. Okay. Now, are you going to stay? You are. Fantastic. All right. I highlighted the most important piece of code that's currently being displayed on the screen. It's that little angle bracket where it says mongoose.document. Now, if you're not familiar with that syntax, or if you're not familiar with generics, there we go. Let's go here. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. There we go. Generics are one of the most powerful additions to software development in however long. In a nutshell, what a generic allows me to do is it allows me to use a data type as a variable. And this is wonderfully powerful because it's going to give me the ability to indicate what data types we might be wanting to use without having to necessarily hard code things in advance. Let's talk about this. So let's come back over here to Mongoose. And what you're going to notice is if I scroll down a little bit here, you're going to notice that there's a little function here called find. And what find will do for me is it will go load, if I don't provide any additional parameters, all of the kittens that are stored inside of the database. And so all of those will come back to me. But here's the problem that we're going to face when we're writing our code. Remember again, this is an object. This is not a data type. This is an object. This is not a data type. Why is that important? Well, the reason that that's important is that when I go back and I make a call like this, where I go to the database and I say, hey, go get me all of the kittens, it's going to come back as an array of unknown objects. Because unfortunately, JavaScript is not going to be able to look at this and figure out what my data types are. And so if on this line of code here, if I went in and I did something like this, where I said, for example, for const kitten of kittens, and I came inside here and I went kitten dot, I'm not going to see anything. Now, I know that there's a name. I know that I could go in and say console log kitten.name. I know that that's there. I know that this code will work. But unfortunately, JavaScript doesn't, because it has no way of figuring out what the data type is. It has no way of figuring out what the document structure is. So it's just going to give me this array of objects. And this is sort of, again, that challenge with JavaScript in general, is because of the fact that it's so flexible, which is wonderful. I'm not bashing JavaScript here. I'm not. I know it sounds like I probably am, but I'm not. Because of the fact that JavaScript is so flexible, it oftentimes can't figure out what data types are. Well, we're not writing JavaScript. We're writing TypeScript. And remember that we have the ability to identify a data type. We've already done this. We have the ability to identify an interface. An interface is going to be a data type. So if I come back over here to model, let me mouse over this again. What you're going to notice is this little generic syntax right here. So what this generic syntax is going to do is it's going to give me the ability to provide a little bit of information about our model. And so I can now map this to an interface. So I can now, this is going to give me red squigglies, don't worry, I'm going to go back and fix it in a second. I can actually now say dog here. And now when I go in and I say dog model.find, let's say const dogs equals await, and then I say dogs dot, or I do this const dog. There we go. What you're going to notice here is that I'm now getting that age and that name. I'm now getting IntelliSense. Why am I getting IntelliSense? Well, the reason that I'm getting IntelliSense is this right here. I'm saying, hey, the data type for this model is going to be dog. And so now I'm going to get full IntelliSense here. Now, I know that I'm getting a red squiggly here. And the reason that I'm getting a red squiggly is because what this is actually looking for is what Mongoose calls a document. And a document in Mongoose speak is an instance of model. Fortunately, one of the cool things that I can do is I can actually create a brand new interface here that I'm going to call dog document, which implements both dog and Mongoose document. Extends. Yeah, that's what you want. Bloop. Bloop. Cool. And now my red squigglies go away. And now, eventually here, if I go in and I say const dogs equals await dog model dot find, this will then give all of them to me. And then I can say for const dog in dogs, bloop, console log dog dot. And now I'm going to get my my IntelliSense here, and I should see there we go. Dot. And now I've got my age and I've got my my name down here. Now you're also going to notice I'm getting a lot of other things as well, and all of that's coming from document. Okay, I'm gonna take a real quick sip of coffee here. And let's just stop for a second. So first of all, number one, if you have questions, please ask. If you have questions, please ask. Number two, what I've done here is I've now created a schema. So this is going to be a MongoDB schema. So this will define how my objects are going to look inside of my database. I have created a local document data type that I can now use as part of my code. And now I've created my interface between my, my code and the database. And I'll pause here. At some point I'll get music. I need music. We all need music. Unfortunately, I'm always relatively limited in what it is that I can play. Like I can't just go back there, grab my Tori Amos album and throw that on and just start playing that, unfortunately, because we'd get in trouble for that. But I'll find some music. So Carlos asked the question, what's the connection string for Mongoose inside of local dot settings? And this is to my own locally running MongoDB. So that's what's going on there. So Jay asked the question, IntelliSense looked better when I used Mongoose model dog instead of dog document. Is there a reason I have to extend document? And the answer is yes, because what's actually going to be coming back when I retrieve an item from a database is going to be the full Mongoose MongoDB object. So it's going to have things that actually aren't on the interface. So admittedly, the interface is going to be more streamlined. If you wanted to get a little bit fancier, or rather, if you wanted to maybe get rid of that, what you could do is, I think this would work. Dog. Will this work? Oh, hold on. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, so what you could do is you could actually just use a cast and convert that into an interface like that. The big thing that you have to remember, though, is that all of those other objects like underscore ID and so forth, all of those do still exist. So this isn't a cast in the truest of senses if you're used to using something like C# or Java, where if you do a cast, it's actually doing a conversion. This is strictly for me right here at design time. So if you wanted to get rid of all that extraneous nonsense, you could go ahead and simplify it that way. But it does need to be dog document because this is what Mongoose is going to require there. Carlos asks, can we have more than dogs when fetching from the database? So can we store dogs and cats? Absolutely, yeah. So what I would do is basically everything that I did up here, and then I would just, at the very end here, assume that I wrote all of the code already, is that I could then go in and say const cat model equals mongoose.model cat document cat, and then cat schema, like that. So yeah, so assuming that I wrote all of that up above, I could absolutely go in and do that. And you could also like start to get into schema inheritance and things like that. So if maybe I knew that name was going to be a very common thing, then you can start to get into like schema inheritance and so forth and so on. And you can go check all of the Mongoose docs for that. But the TLDR on that is 100% yes, that you could go in and do that. Okay, cool. All right. Okay. Now then, how do I want to do this? Just trying to think. I'm gonna do a couple of things. The first thing I want to do, I know that this is going to take a few minutes. So I want to create a new Cosmos database. Just because I know this is going to take a few minutes. So I want to make sure that I'm just doing this now. Give me 1 second here. And then I'm just going to choose this as MongoDB. Actually, I think I want West US 2. Yeah, I want that. Okay. Yeah, so all I'm doing there is I'm just creating my Cosmos DB. This is eventually going to become my Azure database. So I'm just doing that in the background. This takes about like 5 minutes or so. So I just wanted to get that running before we got there. Alex asks the question, would the schema eventually be moved to a separate file? The answer to that is 100% yes. That eventually all of this right here would be moved out to somewhere else. That my connection has to stay here because I'm going to be opening up my connection when I start this function, but the rest of this would be moved elsewhere. I'm not going to do that right now, just because I don't need to. But yeah. Could we use a repository pattern here? Yeah, you absolutely could. That you could go ahead and break that out into something that's going to handle that all for you. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that conversation there. We could go much longer on repository patterns and everything else. I could break out my Martin Fowler book that's sitting behind me, and we could start to really dig into it. But the short answer to the question is yes, you absolutely could go in and do that. So, okay, let's do this. So this right now is going to be set to use a local instance of Mongo that I have. So what I can do is I can create a brand new database here. Hold on, sorry. I realize I'm going a little fast there. Let me back this up. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to set up my database with my objects. And so there's a few different ways that I could go in and do this. The way that I'm going to do this, the tool that I'm going to use here is I'm going to use this fantastic MongoDB extension right here that will actually give me the ability to work interactively with Mongo. So I'll be able to create brand new objects and everything else that I might want. So I can go in and do all of that right here. And so when I bring up this extension here, what you're going to notice is that it's automatically got admin, config, and local there. And you'll notice that I could start creating brand new collections and so forth. So let me create a brand new database that I'm going to call, you know what I'm just realizing. I'm going to call this dog database, just to try and make it a little easier. There we go. Okay, let's do this again. So dog database, enter. It'll then say, hey, create a brand new collection. So the name of my collection will be dog. And then now it's created. So now there's my dog database. There's my dog collection. And then now what you're going to notice is that right now I've got no documents inside of there. Let me see. Do I? What's going to be the easiest way for me to do this? Yeah, that's not what I want. I want you to just give me the ability to just create a document real quickly here. And it's not. Shoot. Okay. Fine. I'm going to do it this way. Let me do it this way. Let me say, okay, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry. I just realized I'd stopped talking there, and this is a habit. This is a new style for me, and so I'm still trying to get used to the fact that I need to keep talking, which I know sounds funny considering the fact that I've been talking this entire time. But it's ironically, this isn't natural for me. That what's natural for me when I'm trying to figure something out is for me to stop talking, and that's something I need to get myself out of the habit of doing. So I apologize for going silent here. So let me talk through this. So here's what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to find a real simple way for me to locally create a handful of dogs. And unfortunately, the little tool inside of Visual Studio Code isn't doing that for me. So I'm going to do this in kind of a brute force way, but it will work. So I'll run this once, it'll work, and then we'll just comment it out. So ignore the man behind the screen here. So I'm going to call this insert many, which will give me the ability to provide documents to add into here. So what I can do is I can say name mongoose, and then age of let's say 10, and then I can say name of Sammy, and then an age of, let's say, 10, like that. Are you gonna do it that way? Nope, you're gonna want that as an array. Not a problem. Okay, cool. All right, so this will then add those two items in like that. So this is going to be my little bit of temporary code to add my dogs into there. So this is just going to be the easiest way for me to do that. Then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to retrieve back all of my dogs. And I'm going to say const dogs equals await dog model.find. There we go. Load all dogs. And then now, yeah, that'll be good. Okay. And then now I'll be able to just return those back. So in theory, when I run this, what should happen is it will create both of those dogs inside of my database and then return that back. So when I run this function locally, it should create those items and then return those back. And Sammy is only 2. She's not 10. Let's not age her prematurely. There we go. Okay, just gonna make my code look a little prettier here. There we go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and give this a shot. Deep breath. We'll see if this works. npm run start. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to get rid of that. And now let's run this. Okay, I don't care about the fact that it can't find the language. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's run this. Okay, cool. It worked. Yes, I don't need to go become an alpaca farmer. So here's what this did. Here's what this did, is this created now 2 items inside of my database, and it returned them back. This is wonderful, because now what this means is the fact that it worked. And if I now go into my little database tool here, let's just come over here to MongoDB. Let's go ahead and search for documents. Will you just show them all to me? Refresh. Can we just do it that way? Maybe? Oh, that's funny. It created it called dogs. That's fine. Yeah, there's my documents. And then there are my 2 items right there. So what we did is we created our 2 dogs now inside of our database. Fantastic. Wonderful. Okay. So now for our next trick. What we want to do is we want to deploy this out into Azure. Now, what I'm going to do is, because of the fact that we know that this code works, and because of the fact that we know that this will create our 2 items, I'm going to let this run on our Cosmos. And this will also just give me the opportunity to just test this locally real quick, make sure that our connection string is behaving the way that we want, and make sure that everything's behaving before we do our deploy. So I think I've stalled long enough. Yep, there's our Cosmos database. I'm going to click go to resource, and then now if I go to the node section, this right here is going to be our connection string. So let me grab that. Is there a MongoDB GUI client that lets us add MongoDB without writing code, Jay asks? The answer is yes. That I could have installed Mongo. Yeah, RoboMongo. There we go. Yeah. That this will give you that as well. No, you can ask everything. Yeah. No, don't ever be afraid to ask questions here. So yeah. So this will do it for you. I just didn't have it installed. So all right. So let me back over here. There's my connection string, which I just lost the highlight of. There we go. Make sure that I've got it all highlighted. There we go. Okay, cool. So there's my connection string. Let me go back over here to my local settings.json, and let's temporarily put that into there. So let's hit save. And now let's go back to my terminal, and let's rerun my code here. Cool, that starts. And then now let's run my function. Cool, that worked. And I can prove that it worked by now going to my Data Explorer, and then, oh, that's funny. It created it as a database that's called test. That's fine. But here's my 2 documents. Chugga. And there is the first one that we just created. You're doing kind of funny things with my zoom there, but that's all right. But there's the first one that we created. And there's the second one that we created. So yeah, so it did that for us. Somebody asked the question, the database driver is generated. That's actually built into Mongoose, because effectively what this is doing is it's effectively just making API calls for us. So it's not like a classic like SQL Server where we need full drivers and things like that. So it's really actually just making API calls. So cool. All right, so now then, let's deploy. So let me revert this back to the way that it was, and let me get rid of this code right here that's going to add dogs. So let me just comment it, so that way you can at least see it. Okay, so now let me commit and push my code. So git status, we've modified all those files. Git add dot, git commit m, added database, and then git push. Voila, cool. And you know, one of the things that I can now do here is let's see. Add a database. I can now put a check next to that. Incorporate Mongoose, put a check next to that. Deploy, we're doing that right now. I think I can put a check next to that. And debug, we've definitely had to debug, so we can put a check next to that. So well done, go team. Yeah. So that's all pushed up. Now, let me go back over here to our static web app, which has already been deployed. Mallory, if you're still out there, if you want to throw in the link to the repository again, that would be fantastic. Okay, now here's the most important step. The most important step is right under here on configuration. That if you remember, what we are doing is we're reading in our connection string. So we need this. So I'm going to go grab that right there, and let's go ahead and let's create a brand new value, and let's paste that in. And then we need the connection string that we were using previously, which is that one right there. So this is now telling our Azure Static Web App where our database is. So now it's going to be able to use that process env and go retrieve that. So let me hit OK here. And that all looks good. Let's make sure that we save this. That looks good. And now let's go ahead. This is as it's deployed. Let's go ahead and hit refresh here. This might take it a minute. It might error out on us as well. Yeah, it's just going to take it a minute. What's happening here? The reason that this is taking it a minute is partly just to make me nervous, but also partly because I just updated the the function, and so it just needs a minute to restart and to do its thing. So let's just make sure. Yeah, that deployed, so we can see that there. All of that's goodness. Let me. Yeah, this is just taking it a minute here. Like I said, it's going to take long enough just to make me nervous. Come on. make sure my connection string is set up right. Yep, that looks good. That's exactly what I had. That's just taking it a minute. Come on. Fingers crossed. If you have questions off stream, what's the best way to reach me? Honestly, ping me on Twitter. That's the best way to find me. Oh, that's interesting. It's giving me a 500. Interesting. Okay. All right. Let's. Well, that's no bueno. All right, let's do this. Let me just make sure that I can run this locally. So let me just run this. Oh, cd API, npm run start, and then let's go in and say npm run dev. I think I called that dev start. Yeah, what I'm going to try and do here is I'm just going to try and make sure that this runs locally. Start dev. There we go. Oh, interesting. Oh, that's fun. Oh, I know where my mistake is. Hold, please. .d. There we go. Nope. All right. This is now build complete. Did you now? Okay, well then start for me. npm install. There we go. npm run start dev. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, this part at least was working last week. That's hilarious. It shouldn't be cores because this is actually all running on the same server, so it's not going to be cores. In fact, you'll even notice that I set this up like locally here. Yeah, so it's not cores. Okay, it's right there. So that part is there. Dang it. Everything was going so smoothly. What? All right, what's your error message? You're looking for PowerShell, but I'm not exactly sure why you're looking for PowerShell. You shouldn't be. Let's do it this way. cd home repos. Cd repos, cd, code coffee, npm install. Yep, all that looks good. Npm run start dev. There we go. Oh, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, see, all right, so it's running locally. Okay, so see, it works. It's running locally. We can see that it's running locally. Let's update our connection string here, and let's make this use Cosmos. Give this a second. Come on. Okay, it's good. All right, and then now let's go back and let's do this again. Yeah, see, this is now using Cosmos. This is running successfully locally. So my code works. My code works. There is something on the server that is not working. And unfortunately, I don't have easy access to the logs that are running on the server. Dang it. All right. I'm over time here. This is sad. This runs locally. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to close on this screen. It runs locally. It's right there. You can see it. It's running locally. It works. Ironically, it's not running in Azure. And I'm not sure why. Let's just make sure like everything got pushed. So I'm going to go into API here, package JSON, and yeah, there's Mongoose. Okay, so that's there. That's all looking good. This is running locally. It works. My code is good. And if I go into my actions here, my insert, yeah, but I commented that out. Yeah, that's a good question about my insert. But I commented that out. And even still, like I've got the admin username and password. So I mean, all of that should be just fine. So yeah. So all of that should still be good. And yeah, I mean, like no errors. Everything looks good here. Huh. I'm going to try something. You know what I'm going to do? Yeah, it's a classic, doesn't work on production. I'm going to try something that I shouldn't actually need to do. But let's see if this does it. So here's my package.json file. And this is my core package.json file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Mongoose here from just inside of my functions. And I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to just try this. I don't think that this is going to work, but let's give this a shot. Dang it. All right, while that's doing its thing, I'm gonna play around here. I'm gonna look, is there another connection string? Let me see if there's like another connection string. Yeah, and, you know, let me just do this. I'm gonna copy that. Let me just try it this way. I don't think that this is gonna make a difference. Of course, this is like bad debugging. That what I'm doing here is I'm trying two things at once. And you should, of course, never do this. You should always just try one after another. Yeah, let's edit this, and I just want to see. This is gonna fix it. This is the fix. I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what it is. I'm gonna file a bug. This is what it is. Okay, so as it turns out, and in fact, you know what I'm going to do just to prove it is I'm going to get rid of that mongoose from there. I knew that was the wrong answer, but I did it anyway just because I was desperate. Should never do things out of desperation. A lot of life lessons here. That's where we're getting today. We're getting a lot of life lessons. Okay. So let me, I'm just going to get rid of that git add dot git commit m reverted change, and then git push. Whoosh, there we go. Okay, so here's the bug. The bug is there's a little thing right here on retry writes, and I wish I could explain a little bit more about why this is, but that needed to be set to false. And on the connection string that I took earlier, that wasn't set. So that was my problem. That retry writes needs to be set to false. So now let's go ahead and save this. Let's make sure that this is fully deployed. One last sip of coffee here. There we go. And chugga, chugga, chugga. A watch deploy never happens. Yeah, you can actually watch this whole thing go. It's a little bit disconcerting at times because you get a lot of like warnings that show up as red, and of course red is the universal color for panic. But it does give you a lot of warnings that show up as red. But you can see at the end here, deployment complete, a little happy face. So now let's come back over here. Let's go ahead and try my call to API dogs. And now it works. See, that's what it was. It was that retry writes equals false. That's what it was. That's what it was. Okay. So now if I go back over here, hit enter, voila, now it's working. Now we can actually see Mongoose Sammy, and I'm just gonna prove it here. I'm gonna go back home, and oops, make sure that everything was saved. Okay, save. Now you can hear Sammy. Yeah, now it works, and I'm just gonna prove it that I'm going to go back over here to my database. I'm going to go to my Data Explorer, and let me I think I can edit from here. There we go. Yep, Cosmos DB update. There we go. Hit refresh. Cosmos DB. It's working. There we go. That was my problem. So the moral of the story is retry writes equals false. That's what I needed. So now that works. So now we officially did everything. We added our database, we incorporated Mongoose, we deployed it. See, you know where I really went wrong? Where I really went wrong was I put the check next to debug as needed too soon. That was my problem. Jay asked the question, how did I find out that it was retry writes? Honestly, it's from a little bit of experience. The reason that I knew that that's what it was is because I'd run into this before and just forgot. Remember that... Okay, let's talk about this for a second here. So remember that remember that Azure Static Web Apps is still in beta. If this was a production service, what I would be able to do somewhere in here is be able to access my logs. And that was the biggest thing that I wasn't able to do, is I wasn't able to access my logs, which of course hamstrings you, because now I can't see what's truly going wrong here. It is worth highlighting that if you connect this into application insights, then it will work just fine. But if you are, if you're not doing that, right now with Azure Static Web Apps, you don't have the ability to see what the logs are. Again, this is a beta product, so some of that behavior is to be expected. So that will eventually change. Eventually, we will have the ability to see logs. So I would have been able to see the error message right there. And then it would have flagged something about retrying writes, and then I would have solved it, which is how I've run into this in the past, is because of being able to see that error message. So that's how I knew what it was from prior experience. The way that you would normally debug this is to look at the logs. Again, I didn't have access to that. This will be coming. This is a beta product. Cool. All right. So yeah, so now you can see it. Now it works. Voila. Cool. All right. The last little thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this on camera just before I forget, because I've flashed the keys now to this on screen a few times. So I really should make sure somewhere in here. Yeah, see, this needs to be updated. I'll go back and do that. Where is it? All right, I guess I'll do it offline. I'll go back and I'll do it later. But I do need to make sure that I change my keys here, which I can do. I just can't find the screen right now. In any event, yeah. So it deployed. It worked. There it is. Yeah, thank you. And by the way, my name is Christopher, not Chris. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you find this style of just going in and exploring helpful. And if you do, first of all, come back next week. Second of all, tell your friends. If you didn't like it, tell your enemies. And come hit me up on Twitter, ask questions. This is really designed to be free-flowing so that I will always, like the day before or earlier in the morning, have an idea of where it is that I want to go, but I don't always have an idea of how I want to get there or otherwise. So please, ask questions and so forth. I hope that you enjoyed it. Come find me on Twitter. Thank you again to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Enjoy your Friday. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week. So yeah, thanks. Bye.